In this video, we're going to look at just the basic components of making a bouncing ball, the classic bouncing ball. We're just going to, for this first one, we're just going to do one bounce and just to focus on the tools and how we're functioning here. So I'm going to try to make this as fast as possible while still hitting every single aspect of this that's really critical. So for this first one, we're just going to do one bounce across the screen, in, bounce, out. So it's going to be moving at a pretty good clip here. So 1/1000, probably about 24 frames. So I'm going to adjust the length of my time by 24. I could also just leave it open. You can always change this later. It doesn't matter. But for right now, let's be focusing on 1 to 24 here. The ball we're going to be using does have its pivot point at the bottom. It just makes it easier if you want to add squash and stretch because the pivot point's in the bottom, but it does mean we're not going to be able to make it roll because it's going to roll through the ground. So there's rigs that do both, but I'm not really worried about that right now. We're just going to fake it, which is why the ball has no texture. I'd recommend not adding one. To get the right position of the ball on the ground, well, actually, I guess let's just go for the first setup. So I'm going to click over here on frame 1. I'm going to move the ball using the red square here. That's going to move it in this axis and this axis only. So you could also lock off an axis by right-clicking over here and choosing lock. That will guarantee it won't shift forward and back in space if you want to avoid that. But for right now, I'm just going to move it over here. We're going to drop it from about this height. And in this position over here, I'm going to hit the button S for set key, and we'll see a red slash appear here. I'm going to go ahead and do the last frame as well, just because I'm just going to have it go to the same height. If you want to be a little more realistic, you can have it lose some energy. This is just a basic conceptual use of our basic use of tools, so I'm not going to overthink it. And our middle frame is number 12. Obviously, if it's going to lose some energy, that might change which is the middle frame, but if we're close, it should be fine. This needs to be on the ground. Now you can visualize it and try to see it there. It's possible that typing in 0 over here might put it right on the ground, but my favorite thing to do is just go over into a perspective window and actually just make sure it's coming through the ground a little bit. You can even exaggerate it a little bit to give a sense of it flattening. As long as it's not obvious that you're cheating there, no one will know that you cheated. It'll feel just like it has a better impact. So now we have 3 ticks. 1, 2, 3. And if we play it, we'll see it doesn't look anything like a bouncing ball. So even though our keys are nice, what we don't have is we don't have the proper spacing as dictated by the graph editor. So if you want, you can spacebar into this bottom plane down here where I have already put a graph editor, or if you don't have one already up here, you can press Window, Animation Editor's Graph Editor to pull up a separate one. For those of you who have more than one monitor, or a really good sized monitor, I would probably do this anyway. It's nice to be able to move this around. If your monitor is small, this can be a little bit more frustrating. So here we go. If I click on the ball, you can see in the graph editor we have curves that explain what's happening with the movement of the basketball at any given point. Give myself a little more space here. Any graph that is flat means nothing is happening. And if you like, you can even select it and delete it, and you'll actually see the key marker over here, the red block, disappear to let you know that there's now no key information on that scale. Typically, I like to keep key information on there. It generally is safer when you're animating, even if the curve is doing nothing. So if at the let's say you are doing this and then suddenly you decide to make it scale down and up, but you've deleted all your keys, it's gonna just start at that different scale. So better just to have all your keys in there, even if they're doing nothing. The main keys we are playing with right now, though, are Translate Y, which is the up and down motion. You can see, if I can click on this properly, that green is up and down, and we can see down here in the lower left-hand corner that green is Y. So all those things reinforce the idea, including the green here, that this is the Y direction graph. The other graph for us is Z, which is the left to right movement. You can click over here and scrub through the animation in the graph editor. You can click and drag through here as well. If it's doing the wrong window, just right click on the window you want. Right click on the window you want. Okay, left click on the window you want. The reason why I don't like to do that is so it usually deselects your ball or your object, but so be it. You can also hold in the button K, as in kangaroo, and then that allows you to scrub through anywhere in the window. To navigate in this window, the graph editor, to see your graphs, you can select a point and press F for frame selected, and it will zoom that into the entire window. A will zoom you completely out. If you select multiple points, it will zoom to those points, but it will always include the next one as well. So in this case, I just get the whole graph. Right now, we're just going to focus on well, let's look at the Z first. The Z is the movement across the whole plane here, so from left to right. And while it should be losing a little speed if we want to be super realistic, the fact is it's going to be fairly consistent. This is a pretty fast movement. So right now, we can see that because it's flat here, it starts out slow, then starts to speed up, then goes at a constant speed for the most part. There's a little bump right there that will affect it, but probably not too obviously visually, and then comes to a stop here when it goes flat again. In this case, I want to go straight across the screen. I'm going to grab all these points and hit linear. So this is the linear kind of hotkey to automatically turn things to one straight line. I could actually delete this middle one and get a perfect straight line. That will look something like this. So you can see now it's a little more smooth going across the screen, even though it doesn't feel like it's bouncing in the slightest. Let's fix that with that Y translate. So Y translate. This one currently, it starts out slow and then speeds up and then maintains a constant speed for most of the movement down. And then as it comes to the ground, instead of speeding up, it slows down again and does the reverse on the way out. This part's actually not bad. This part's not okay at all. So let's fix that. Let's grab the center where it contacts the ground. And I'm going to break that tangent. Right now, if I were to select the end by doing a little drag box, don't try to click directly on these. It's too slow. Select here, then do a drag box around the handle. And then again, don't try to click on it directly to move it. Just press W for move, or if you prefer, click on the button here. That's slower, but you can do it. And then you can middle mouse click anywhere in the screen and move this as if you were clicking directly on it. What this means is when I grab this handle by doing this, I can do it really fast. If I have to click here and then move, it's a little bit slower. That doesn't seem to matter much, but when you're deep in animation, the faster you move, the more you can move at the speed of your brain, which is nice. So you'll notice when I move this, the handles move on both sides. I want to split this. I want this to come down into a V. I want to accelerate all the way in. So I'm going to grab that center handle, and this button right here, you can let your mouse sit for a second, is called break tangent. That will break it. You'll see it's now a dotted line. And now I can grab the ends, and again with translate on, I can go ahead and pull this up into more of a V shape. You want your speed coming in the same as your speed going out. So something more like this. Let's see what this looks like. It's okay. I think it needs to be a little faster in the bounce. It feels a little slow to me, a little floaty. So I'm going to go back to the translate Y, space bar in, press A if you need to zoom to your full screen. And let's go ahead and raise those up a bit. It's not a huge difference, but let's see what we get. Again, it's okay. I would like a little more bounce, but it's much better than it was for sure. So one thing you can do here, which I again didn't get a chance to show before, we can make these handles grabbable and pullable. For me, they're already there because I have this on default. I'm going to make these more like yours. So right now, you guys are more likely in... Whoa. Here, I'll fix it all. You guys are a little more likely to be under curves, non-weighted tangents. Now it looks bad right off the bat, but that's because I was already compensating a bit. So what this means is when you grab your handles, you can't pull on them and you can't change the degree of the arc. I get some control, just not as much as I want. By the way, you want to be a little careful. If I go too far, you'll notice it stretches this tangent up much higher. This would actually make it go in the opposite direction before it comes down. We don't want that. So it should be level or coming down. This might actually have a little bit more bounce to it. It does. That's much better. But you can play with it if you want more control, or when you do it, or you want to do a more exaggerated bounce. So right here, if I grab the curve, I can go over to curves and choose weighted tangents instead of non-weighted tangents. You can also set your default here to non-weighted or weighted. And now the handles are grabbable and pullable, so you can actually change the feel quite a bit. For this one, I'm going to go straight vertical for a little bit for a really exaggerated bounce. And just for fun, I'm going to grab this handle. I'm going to hold in Shift to lock it to the horizontal or vertical axis and drag horizontally to give it even more hang time. So this will be much more of a cartoony, exaggerated bounce. Let's see how this one looks. That one's so exaggerated, it doesn't even feel like it's hitting. So I'm not liking that so much. The idea here, though, is you can play until you get the feel that you're looking for, whether it's more realistic or a little bit more fun. So I'm going to set these back to default by hitting flat tangent. And these guys, I'm going to grab and pull down. Hey now. There we go. No. They do not want to cooperate at all. One more time with the split. There's a lock going on. That's making this a little bit harder to manipulate. Let's see if that looks a little bit better. Still has good hang time and definitely more bouncy. I'll probably pull it back a little bit more, but we're getting somewhere. So hopefully that helps kind of give a sense of how you do a bounce. A couple quick things which I do want to point out here. So this is, of course, assuming everything goes exactly as you planned. But if it's not happening, there's a few things you should probably know. You can move keys around. And you want to be careful when you do this because you can actually cause problems. But if you want to move a key somewhere, you don't have to remake it. You can just hold in Shift and drag over the key you want to move. And then if you click in the middle of this highlighted section, you can move the key wherever you want and change your animation quite a bit. Why I say be careful is because if you grab multiple keys and then drag on the ends, it will try to scale it for you. And Maya has a habit of putting keys on frames that don't exist. And this will cause big problems as you get deeper into animating. So my recommendation is just use this as a pull handle. One other thing you can do with this, though, is you can select multiple keys and press delete on your keyboard. Right click and press delete to get rid of multiple keys. So that's kind of a nice feature. If you just want to get rid of one key, you can just right click and choose delete. Or if you prefer, you can just key right over top of it and it will erase the previous one. And lastly, you can also delete keys in the graph editor. So if I spacebar over to my graph editor, I can just grab a key and press delete and it's gone. It'll only affect the ones you see. You can have multiple ones here. If I delete this one, it only affects that one, none of the others. So there you go.